Hello, profilers. This is the Profiles After Show, where we take a cue from Scott Mance and Alicia Malone, and we do our own version of Profiles. This week they did Christopher Nolan, well, because he has a new movie out called Interstellar. So, with that in mind, we're going to go down Scott and Alicia's Fast Five, and number one on Scott and Alicia. You know what? First, I'm going to introduce my panelists before we do that. Panelists, introduce yourselves. Justin, Rasika, and Rachel.
Hand the ball off, bro, so we know who needs to speak.
Justin, go.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Justin Bass, a.k.a. Steve Zissou.
Rasika.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ruska. I'm one of the admins on Schmoville and a profiler. Ready to talk some Nolan?
And the last one, Rachel.
Hey guys, I'm Rachel. I'm a big fan of Profiles and the After Show, and thanks for having me on again. Excited to talk about Christopher Nolan.
All right, now that we have got the introductions out of the way, we're going to go and we're going to do the first of Christopher Nolan's movies on Scott and Alicia's list. And there was a little bit of a controversy. Alicia had Batman Begins, and Scott Mance had Batman: The Dark Knight Rises. So it's going to go right into the ballpark of what we're talking about, because we're all going to have something different, I would imagine. And so we're going to start every round with Steve, and then Rasika, then Rachel, and I'm not doing that on purpose, Rachel. It's just how it shows up on my screen. So let's start it off, guys.
All right. I actually have both on my list, so I'll start with my number 5. My number 5 is The Dark Knight Rises. I think it's an extremely underrated film. It's very hard to follow The Dark Knight, and I understand it. The film has its problems with continuity, and after following Batman Begins and The Dark Knight and how grounded those were, there are some plot holes if you really get to digging into it. But I find it an extremely entertaining film. I thought Tom Hardy as Bane knocked it out of the park, and I love it just as much as I do the rest of it. And if you want to go, Rasika?
Yeah. My Fast Five was the same as Alicia's. It was Batman Begins. This reason I didn't have Dark Knight Rises in my Fast Five was I don't know. I didn't feel like it was as strong as the first two. But Batman Begins, to this day, it's my favorite superhero origin story on film. First Superman comes pretty close, but Batman Begins, I mean, what it did not just for the superhero genre, but you look at every other superhero movie that came after it, you definitely see its stamp on those movies, and it's a character study of Bruce Wayne, and no other superhero movie really did anything like that. So yeah, that's why it's my number 5.
Dark Knight Rises is not in my Fast Five, but Batman Begins is. It's actually in my number 4 spot. Rosika said it great. It's the best origin story superhero film I think ever done, because you spend nearly an hour getting to know Bruce Wayne, and he goes on this literal journey, and so you're with him every step of the way, and so he really earns becoming Batman, and when he does, you're really invested in it. And I also love it because of the 3 Batman films in the trilogy, it's the one that still has some fun, and I get Nolan's take, and it's a darker, more serious, more grounded superhero take, but I still like a little bit of fun and adventure in my superhero movies, and I think Batman Begins, of the 3, has the best balance of that. So it's in my number 4 spot.
Okay, I have similar to Rachel and I think Steve, and the fact that I do not have the Batman: The Dark Knight Rises in my Fast Five, but I do have Batman Begins in my Fast Five, and I have Batman Begins at number 3 on my list. Yeah, I mean, we've seen so many origin stories. We've seen the Batman origin story done before in a previous movie with Michael Keaton by Tim Burton, but I don't think we've ever seen an origin story like this before. He has more motivation to become Christian Bale slash Bruce Wayne, more motivation to become Batman than anybody would ever have because of the things that have happened to him with Ra's al Ghul and then his parents and whatnot, and he has so many good teammates, as in like Lieutenant Gordon and Lucius Fox, and obviously his butler Michael Caine played Alfred. I mean, and these are all top-notch actors, and that's the thing that Nolan did with the Batman trilogy. He didn't mess around with just, well, he did have Katie Holmes in there. Well, we won't talk about her.
Yeah, I like Katie Holmes.
But he had nothing but great people in his movies, and I really, one of my favorite things about the Batman Begins is Chicago. The city of Chicago sits in for Gotham City, and I remember the L. I've ridden the L in Chicago, and they turned the L into this cool rail system, and I just love the city of Chicago. It looks so cool as Gotham City. I didn't like it when they turned Pittsburgh into Gotham City in The Dark Knight Rises. That you could tell they totally look different, in my opinion. But okay, so now we're gonna go. Go ahead,
Dan.
Justin.
At number 4, while we're on it, I have Batman Begins, and Batman is probably not probably, he is my favorite fictional character. I don't know if any of y'all watch Batman the animated series, but I watch that religiously. I think Batman Begins is the most realistic superhero movie we have ever had and ever will have. I mean, if you really look at it, Christopher Nolan did an amazing job of actually making you think someone could become Batman, and that's why I love that movie so much, and I don't think we'll ever get a take on Batman quite as grounded as Batman Begins was. It's not just a good Batman movie, it's a good film. When it come out, I took my whole family to it, my mother, my father. Everyone can appreciate that movie.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think Alicia said it best. It's the only superhero movie that makes sense.
It really does. And that's the good thing about the Nolan Dark Knight trilogy is they are grounded in reality. We'll get into more of that later. Okay, now we're going to go on to Alicia and Scott's First Blood, and I'm just going to chime in with mine because mine matches theirs, and I just figure it makes sense for me to go. So Alicia and Scott's, both of theirs First Blood was Memento, and so is mine. That was the very first Nolan movie I saw, and you know, they said it all with the backwards forward storyline. You know, the forward going in color and the backwards black and white, or am I getting that wrong? But yeah, Guy Pearce, a really good actor. He's starting to come into his own the last few years with a lot of projects over the last few years. Really good movie and really good mystery and kind of a thriller. You don't know what's going to happen until the very end of the movie. So now we're going to start back with Steve, then Rasika, and then Rachel.
Okay. After this time, Dan, what I'll do, if you want to go Rachel, Rasika, and then me, just keep it a little more even, I'll help you out. Anyways, my First Blood was Memento. All I can say is it blew my mind. I can't remember. I was around probably 21 or so when I first seen it. It was when I was just starting to get a love for independent films and independent movies, and a buddy of mine just gave it to me one day, and he's just like, hey, check this movie out, and I think it might have been my First Blood to Guy Pearce, too, because I love LA Confidential, but I don't think I discovered it till later. So it was a double First Blood for me. And while I'm on the subject, I had a hard time finding it online, as Alicia mentioned in profiles, and the copy I ordered off of Amazon was scratched, so I haven't seen it in a long time. So that's why it's off my top 5, because I couldn't go into much detail about it. Rasika?
Um, yeah, I'm kind of the baby of the group, so obviously I was a bit too young for Memento when it came out. My first blood was actually Batman Begins. Yeah, I mean, we've already talked about it a lot. I mean, I was pretty young when I saw it, and it was a superhero movie that was different than the rest of them. I mean, I remember at that time it was like Spider-Man and X-Men and Blade. I think those were the ones that were around at that time. And Batman Begins just came around, and it just knocked all of those out of the water for me. So, yeah, that's my first blood.
With the majority, I saw Memento. It was my first blood. I actually saw it in the theater. I was in college in Boston, and I just remember going with a bunch of college friends, and we were all in film school, so immediately afterwards we were all just, like Dan said, minds blown, and just dissecting it and talking about it. And I actually own it, so I was able to rewatch it this week and just remind myself of how amazing that movie is. So a really great one to start off with, for sure.
You guys are so old.
Yeah, you gotta know the funny thing.
Not numbered, Rasika.
It came out Tuesday digitally. I guess the reason you couldn't get it is because they're doing a re-release for Interstellar. I was looking online today on Vudu, and it was up on the new releases.
That makes sense. All right, so with that in mind, we are going to go to Scott and Alicia's number 4 movie, and that is Insomnia. So I guess since Justin gave us a suggestion, we'll go Rachel, Rasika, and then him this time. Where is Insomnia on your list?
Insomnia is actually just off of my list. I only saw it once. I remember really liking it, but when I was looking at the list and making my top 5, it just slid on to the outside of it. I remember it being a little simpler and more straightforward, but I do remember thinking it was really beautiful, being set in Alaska and using the plot point of it being light all day was used really well. So I feel like he was stepping up his game in terms of using more atmosphere and location than he had in Memento. So definitely a good movie, but not in my top 5.
Yeah, same here. It's I actually consider it Nolan's weakest film. I still love it though. It's not on my top 5, but yeah, I mean it's a great movie. Great performances from Al Pacino and Robin Williams. A different role for Williams, definitely. And yeah, I think you hit on it. The atmosphere of the movie is what I think I love most about it. It felt a lot like the show Twin Peaks in certain aspects, which I really liked. And I mean, it's a really good movie. I don't know, there's other movies of his I like more. So.
I know we're not necessarily doing this portion of the show, but I feel it's in my underrated. I feel Insomnia is underrated among, as they label us, Nolan Knights, because it is his most different film. I think it's the only one he's done that he hasn't written, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that's.
But it's still amazingly directed, and I pretty much can't say anything that hasn't already been said, but I don't know if anybody here owns the Blu-ray to it, but I strongly suggest it as a buy because it's one of the few films that's actually got commentary by Christopher Nolan. And not only does it have commentary, when you watch it with the commentary, you see the film in the order of the scenes he shot. So that's the first time I've ever seen that on any commentary. It's really amazing.
All right, thanks for that information, Steve. I have Insomnia on my list at number 5, and a few weeks ago we did the Robin Williams profiles, and we weren't doing an after show at that time, and so I watched Insomnia again because I did a whole marathon of Robin Williams movies. And the thing about Insomnia and Robin Williams is that you never saw Robin Williams play this kind of character, a really sketchy kind of troublemaking character, a bad guy. And I mean, that's the first time I saw him play real drama, and he knocks that performance as the bad guy out of the park. And then the other thing is my second favorite actor of all time, Al Pacino. I mean, we all know about Serpico and The Godfather and Scarface and Scent of a Woman and all these movies. He gives one of his most underrated performances in Insomnia, and you're right. You feel like you're tired. You feel like you're going to sleep because you're following along with him, and he's like falling asleep and don't know what's going on. He doesn't know if he shot his partner or not. And of course, you have the two-time Oscar winner Hilary Swank, and she holds her own with these three real powerhouses if you really think about it: Christopher Nolan, Robin Williams, and Al Pacino, and she does a great job as a fledgling detective, kind of just trying to learn the job. But I really, really, really like Insomnia. And okay, with that, we're going to go to Alicia and Scott's Right Stuff. And Alicia, and I got some information about Alicia's Right Stuff, but I'm going to read what she said first. The football scene in The Dark Knight Rises, where Bane puts all these explosives underneath the field, and it blows up the field in the Gotham Knights football game. And Scott is the 18-wheeler truck flips over, and then the Joker plays chicken with Batman and then escapes. Okay, go ahead, Rachel, with yours.
Oh, cool. Well, since I get to go first, I'm going to pick the obvious one, the hallway fight scene in Inception. I just think that you just push the boundaries of filmmaking. I think that it's a precursor to movies like Gravity and then Interstellar, like what he was able to practically pull off and not CGI. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt is great in it, and I just remember being gobsmacked in the theater watching that scene play out. And in a movie that was so innovative in story, and then to also have innovative storytelling techniques in that scene just sort of was the epitome of what he sort of set the bar and achieved in filmmaking was. So that was just a stellar scene.
Yeah, I almost picked that scene too, but my right stuff was the first 6 minutes of The Dark Knight, the bank heist scene. That is, I mean, to this day, it's one of the best opening scenes to any movie ever. I mean, it sets a tone, and when you watch Batman Begins, that last scene when you get teased of the Joker, and you're wondering, what this guy's all about, and then the beginning of Dark Knight, the entire way that scene is edited and the pacing of it, I just think it's perfect. I could just watch that scene, on a loop the entire day, and I'd never get bored. See, that's my right stuff.
I actually have got a different one written down, but since it's the one that won the brackets, it was the hallway scene versus the Joker interrogation. So I'll discuss the Joker interrogation. Batman was The Dark Knight was probably the most anticipated I've ever been to go see a movie. And initially, when I come out of it, I was not disappointed, but I just amped it up a little too much. And the next morning, I got up, and that scene stuck with me so much I could not quit thinking about it. And I immediately went back and watched that movie that day. That's how powerful that scene is. Just Batman using his brute and raw force to intimidate criminals, but the Joker just laughing at him. I mean, he literally can't hurt the Joker. He can't do nothing to the Joker, and that's the first time we get to see the magic of the Joker and Batman actually played out in film like that, and unfortunately the last. The way the Joker sets Batman up to go save Rachel instead of Harvey, just the entire scene. If I don't want to put you on the spot, Rachel, but I actually do read all the comments on those brackets, and you wrote a really great one about it being acting Tour de France. Would you like to comment on that? It was a pretty good comment.
Sure. I just what was remarkable about it is that it's a comic book movie, it's an action movie, but the scene that most people remember is this one-on-one scene, and I called it an acting tour de force because it just brought out the absolute best in both of those actors, and you believed every second of it, and you're just mesmerized by it. I think that Heath Ledger is brilliant as the Joker, and he is in that scene, but I think Christian Bale upped his game to meet him, so they were well matched in the scene, and like you said, it's stuck with all of us for days afterwards, and that's one of the things that Nolan does best, creating scenes and characters and things like that stick with us that long.
All right. Sorry, guys. I just felt I should represent the brackets. But the one I actually wrote down, because I figured someone would use that one actually, is the breaking of the bat. Regardless of what anyone thought of that movie walking out, when that scene actually happened in The Dark Knight Rises, it was so intense, and you even knew it was coming. There was so much foreshadowing with Alfred, telling him, he was pretty much, look, you're going to get your ass kicked if you go up against this guy. And just on film, period, I don't think we've ever seen Batman, who is this unstoppable force in his mythology, just get beat up like that. In the dialogue, you merely adopted the dark. I was born and raised in it. Just all of that was just so tingling the entire time, mixed with intense action and the intensity of it all, the betrayal of Catwoman. Just the entire scene I thought was amazing, and no matter what you think about the movie, when you was in a theater and you seen that scene for the first time, it was epic.
Yeah, I remember my theater was like dead silent that entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. That was an epic scene, and with scenes, you guys have all taken. Rasika took mine, and then I was gonna originally, before watching profiles, I was gonna do the one that Scott Mance did, the one with the truck, and then when Rachel went and Rasika went, I thought, okay, no one's gonna do the interrogation scene. And so then Steve goes and he does the interrogation scene.
My bad.
It's all right. It's all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch on all of your scenes a little bit and just tell you. But I want to say, Rasika, I absolutely 100% agree. Wow, is that scene at the beginning of The Dark Knight just so perfect? I mean, how it's planned. No, he told me to shoot you. No, I was supposed to shoot the bus driver. And these guys keep shooting each other, and who's left standing is the Joker. And then, of course, obviously nobody knows it's the Joker until he takes off his mask. And that's the first time we see Heath Ledger as that character. And even William Fichtner is great in that scene where he's, you don't know who you're messing with.
What amazing cameo.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the best cameos ever. And he just steals that scene. But it really sets the bar for a movie that's just going to be great. It is just going to be a great movie after that scene. When that scene was done, it was like, wow, where can this movie go next? Because that scene was just so great. But and the truck scene, wow. I saw a making of video or a documentary about the making of the truck scene. And that was in downtown Chicago on Lower Wacker. They have an Upper Wacker and a Lower Wacker. I know, no jokes, please. But I saw how they did that scene, and that was just such a crazy scene. And then another crazy scene was I saw them blow up the building. The hospital was actually a business building that they were getting ready to blow up in Chicago, and so obviously they put it into the movie and they put a hospital in there and they put the hospital blowing up. So that's that. But all right, now we're gonna go to.
I'll retort to your comment, Dan. How awesome of an introduction was it to the Joker, and to show you the psychology of him, if you can even begin to fathom his psychology. That first scene, he kills off his entire crew, and when William Fichtner comes up, he goes and puts the grenade in his mouth, and you think he's just going to blow him up. But he did that just to mess with the dude. I mean, that's just a perfect example of how the Joker is, and just an awesome way to set that character up.
Oh yeah, that's classic Joker. I mean, if you've seen one Joker appearance like in the animated series or read something in the comics, that's classic Joker. And I forgot this one part, the buses, how he planned by using a bus, and he knew the buses were going to come by at that time, so he could just sneak back out and go right with the buses. Oh, no one's going to stop a school bus full of kids. They just didn't realize that it wasn't full of kids. It was the bad guy was in the bus. So I always loved how the buses just meld in and go right down the street. But all right, with that being said, we're going to go into the player. Okay, the player is now originally we're going to do. We had talked about it. We were going to do villains, and I thought that would be cool. But everybody else has different ideas. So what we're going to do is Rachel, Rashika, and Justin, everybody do their player, and I'll go last.
Okay. Well, I'll pick somebody that it's sort of arguable in terms of being a villain, but I think ultimately ends up being one, and that's Angier in The Prestige, because you understand both sort of sides of the rivalry between him and Borden through the movie, but there's a certain point about halfway where he's talking to Olivia, Scarlett Johansson's character, and he basically says that I don't care about my wife, I care about the secret. And that's sort of like his obsession is taken over. It's not about revenge for his dead wife. It's not about anything other than just one-upping Borden and doing everything and anything to achieve that. And so I think he sort of crosses the line into being a villain at that point. And Hugh Jackman just sells the hell out of it and is great. So that's my pick for the player.
Okay. I was gonna say the Joker, but I think that might have been a bit too easy for me. But so I'm gonna go with Dominic Cobb from Inception. I think he's an underrated, he's an overlooked character. I think his arc throughout the story. I think, I mean, just the way you see him in the beginning, and there's a lot more to him as the film goes on, and through the flashbacks and everything, you get to see more of his subconscious and what he's going through, and then in the end, the whole twist ending, you get to see like that he has sacrifice and all this stuff, and I think DiCaprio acted out really well. So that's my choice.
All right. This isn't the one I picked because I was trying to go for a little less obvious one, but I completely agree with you, Rachel. If I was going to just pick one to pick and not for discussion, it would be Anger. How awesome was Hugh Jackman in that role? He was perfect for it. When you think about his history on stage, that role played to his strong suit so well because he was on stage the entire movie. And I can't remember who was initially supposed to play him, but it wasn't Hugh Jackman. Somebody else backed out, I believe, and that's how Hugh Jackman got the role. Does anybody know who the original? Okay, so
was it the guy who? Never mind.
Oh, go ahead, Ross.
No, was it going to be that? Was it that guy who? Who's the guy who made American Hustle?
No.
No, it's not. It's that nothing to do with that.
We'll get to that in the did you know? The one I ended up picking is Tesla, and I kind of got made fun a little bit of by Dan before we started on there. But the main reason I picked him is because you kind of have to look at one of the most recognizable people in the world a second time. Is that David Bowie? he was such a chameleon in that role. One of his, he's a good actor for a musician, but that one, he was up there. And I also loved the undertones, because the whole story of The Prestige is pretty much about obsession. And Tesla had his own obsession with his alternating currents and his battle with Thomas Edison on the direct current. And he's an amazing character in history. Maybe I'm missing a film. Anybody in the comments that's listening to this can give me a suggestion. I would love to check it out. But out of all the ones I've seen, that's the greatest performance and story of Tesla I've seen on film.
All right, well, unlike you guys, I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit, and I'm going to go with the Joker. I mean, I don't know how you can not pick the Joker as the best Christopher Nolan character. I mean, Heath Ledger gives the performance of his lifetime. I mean, the nuances, like Alicia and Scott, the licking of the lips, and one minute he could be funny, and then next he could be the most brutal man you ever seen. Like put the one guy's head right into I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. I mean, just so many just great turns in The Dark Knight for Heath Ledger and the Joker, and I'd be crazy if I didn't pick that character, and that's why I was going to go with Nolan villains in the first place. I wanted to pick the Joker. I thought everybody would go with the Nolan Dark Knight trilogy villain, but I guess I was wrong on that. You guys aren't enamored with the Dark Knight villains as much as me. I love Scarecrow, Ra's al Ghul, Two-Face. I mean, Bane.
We might have to start sharing notes for the show from now on.
They're all great villains. That's why it's so obvious to pick one of the Dark Knight villains in the Dark Knight trilogy. Okay, but what I'm going to do now is we're going to go and do some notes that I had down here. We're going to read some of Alicia and Scott's little notes that they had, and then I'm going to throw a few in on my own here. Okay. They had The Dark Knight made $1 billion. Remember that. This is before all these superhero movies started coming out, and a lot of movies weren't making $1 billion. Even I may be wrong, but even the Star Wars trilogy, the second half of the Star Wars trilogy, didn't make $1 billion. You know, the ones that nobody likes. So $1 billion was a lot of money. Of course, now we usually get 1 or 2 movies a year that make $1 billion. You know, obviously the Lord of the Rings trilogy made a lot of money. Iron Man 3, but I don't know if we have any football fans in the crowd here, but if you're listening or if you're on the panel, I said earlier that The Dark Knight Rises took place in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh set in for Gotham this time, which it looks totally different than Chicago. I don't know why they thought they could get away with using Pittsburgh instead of Chicago, but whatever. And the field that they play the football game on is called Heinz Field. And the Gotham football team is called the Gotham Knights. And when you see the field blow up, and you see this guy number 86 running, and you see him turn around, and on the back of his jersey, it said Ward. And everybody thought, oh, there's something with Robin, because that's a little hint that maybe Robin might be in this movie. Well, let me tell you who number 86 with the name Ward on the back of their jersey is. That is none other than Pittsburgh Steelers great Heinz Ward. And he was number 86 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it made sense that they would get somebody to do a cameo. You got to give Christopher Nolan credit for that he would get Heinz Ward, and then everybody would run with it and think, oh, it's something to do with Robin. It's something to do with Robin. But also I have from, Alicia and Scott said that Nolan screens, he likes to screen movies for the people making the movie that he's doing now. And when he did Interstellar, he screened the right stuff. And when he did The Dark Knight, which he deems a crime drama, he screened Heat, Citizen Kane, and Black Sunday. And all right, and The Dark Knight, like I said before, The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight trilogy is grounded in reality. I mean, if there was a series of superhero movies, which we now know as Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, all these other ones, Superman, this is probably the most grounded trilogy or group of superhero movies there has been. You could actually walk the streets where, quote unquote, The Dark Knight was filmed. Chicago, Pittsburgh, so forth. And the last thing I'm going to do before we go to no, we're going to go to Fast 5 number 2 now. I don't know if we there he is. I was just going to ask if you were there, Rasika. Okay, yeah. Fast 5 number 2 on Alicia and Scott's list is Inception. I'm sure you all have this on your list. Start with Rachel, then Rasika, and Justin again, or Steve.
Inception is definitely on my list. It's my number 1. I had a hard time picking between number 1 and number 2, but I just think that everything came together for Inception. I think it's, for better or worse, that's where he set the bar really, really high, which is why all of this debate about Interstellar. But he took all the risks that we know and expect him to take, and they all really paid off and worked in this movie. It was smart, intelligent storytelling. It was a unique, original story. It kept you guessing from the beginning to the end. After the movie, you kept thinking about it. You could rewatch it. But it didn't hand the movie to you or the story to you. You took from it what you wanted to. There's a lot of interpretation, so again, a lot of room for discussion. I think his best ensemble, as far as actors go, Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Tom Hardy, I think steals the movie in a lot of his scenes. Cillian Murphy, Michael Caine, I could go on and on. But I just think his riskiest movie that paid off in every way you would want it to. Filmmaking, story making, the plot, the themes, the whole 9 yards. So it's my number 1.
Yeah, Inception for a long time was my number 2, but I recently rewatched it the day before I watched Interstellar, and my opinion of it completely changed. I think it's his masterpiece. It's my number 1 as of now. There's something about that movie that, I've seen it a bunch of times, but I hadn't revisited it in a while. But when I did, there's so much more things that I noticed about it that I missed the first time. And it's just one of those movies that the more you think about it, the more you watch it, there's always something new that you pick up on or notice. I agree with what Rachel said about it being his best ensemble piece. I think all the performances were great. We got introduced to Tom Hardy, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt was great in the scenes he was in. DiCaprio, Ellen Page, they were all, just so perfect in their roles, and they all played off each other so well. And the story itself is just so intuitive and original, and you don't really see blockbuster movies that big that are original these days, and so yeah, Inception is my number 1.
That's a tough one. I had a hard time deciding whether I'd put it 1 or 2, but I ended up putting it at 2. And not to be redundant from all the great points you guys and ladies have already made, I would just like to bring up Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Tom Hardy. Welcome to Hollywood. That movie made those 2 guys, they're 2 of the biggest stars in Hollywood now. And going into that, everybody knew who Joseph Gordon-Levitt was from Third Rock, and a few people have seen 500 Days of Summer, but he just nailed it, got out of that child actor persona he had, and then the romantic comedy persona he might have had for 500 Days of Summer. And Tom Hardy, I had no idea who this guy was when I went and seen that movie. And he just blew me away, and it continues to blow me away to this day. So I just got to give a big kudos for his casting in the film.
Yeah, that's that. that's the one thing. If you look at the Nolan movies, going off subject real quick, they all have great casts. He doesn't get a bunch of crumb bums and McDonald's cooks to work with him. He gets the best. He gets Oscar winners or actors and actresses who are going to be great in the near future. And after they work with him, they become great, like you said. Prestige came out, and I don't know if Prestige came out before the X-Men or after the X-Men. A lot of people didn't know who Hugh Jackman was until the X-Men. He lucked into that role. He wasn't even supposed to be Wolverine. But same thing with Christian Bale. Yeah, American Psycho and some smaller roles and Captain Corelli's Mandolin and stuff like that. And he was a child actor in something early on in his career. But a lot of people didn't know Christian Bale. Bam, he blows up after the Dark Knight trilogy. And then he gets Oscar winners: Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Hilary Swank, Al Pacino, Robin Williams. He works with the best actors, and people want to work with him because he's a great director. Okay, I went off on that tangent. Sorry about that. Yeah, I have Inception at number 2 as well. I mean, one of the things, without going over what everybody else is, I love the fact that Christopher Nolan takes these movies in so many different locations, like the frozen Iceland in Inception, and then he's in like a desert town, and everybody's sweating their butts off, or he's in a city in France, or he takes his movies to so many different locations. And one of the best things about Inception is you got so many different vast places that's going on for the different dream levels. And I thought that was kind of clever on him to have the different dream levels be three or four different, like, distinctly different places. And I just love the hallway scene as well. I mean, wow, is that hallway scene and the van falling and all? I mean, just the end of that movie is just so you're just on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen, with the van and everything. But yeah, Inception's number 2. But I'm going to take a cue from Scott Mantz. He gave a little clue in the show, and I'm just going to put this out there for you guys. Him and Alicia ask, where would Interstellar be on your Fast 5 if you could put it in your Fast 5, which we have decided we were not going to put it in our Fast 5. But go down the list. Rachel, Rasika, and Justin, I'm assuming we all saw Interstellar, and where would it go on your Fast 5 if you could put it in there?
For me, it would probably be 4 or 5. I don't think it's as strong story-wise as Inception or Dark Knight. Memento has just got a soft place in my heart just because of the ingenious storytelling. But I do think I liked it. It had more to say and was more ambitious and interesting than Insomnia or The Prestige or Dark Knight Rises. So yeah, I guess that puts it at 4 or 5 for me.
I can't do this. Here's the thing about Interstellar. I had a few issues with the beginning of the movie, and there are. I mean, I recognize the faults in it, but the more I think about it, and I mean, as of now, it's. I don't know where I would place my Fast 5, to be honest.
So, in other words, you wouldn't put it in your Fast 5 at all?
No.
Okay.
It might be my number 1. The more I think about it, but it's not fair to say. I only saw it once yesterday, so.
All right, that's fine. All right, Justin, go
as
ahead.
of now, thinking about it, it's at top spot for me right now.
I'm right there with Rasika, and we have talked all week, and both of us went into this movie completely blind. I had only seen the very first trailer for it, and I cut myself off. I hadn't seen any set photos or anything of it. And I didn't have my critical eye on. I just went to the movie there to be entertained and taken away, and I was. It was one of the greatest theatrical experiences I've ever had in my life. But we'll get more into that later.
All right. Well, I've been thinking about this. I saw it on Thursday, and I've been thinking about it a lot. It's really got a lot in my head over the last 3 or 4 days. I had to go to work a couple days, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it, which is good. But I definitely put it in my top 3. I'll definitely put it number 3 after The Dark Knight and Inception. It's just a groundbreaking movie, and I just absolutely love Interstellar. Cannot say enough. We got a discussion later about it, so we'll get into more of that later. Okay, so that leaves us with number 1, and I have a seeking suspicion whoever had Inception at number 1 has The Dark Knight, or Inception at number 1 probably has The Dark Knight at number 2. Whoever has The Dark Knight at number 1 has Inception at number 2. So let's go down the list and find out what we probably already know.
No, I had Following at number 1.
Ross appreciates The Following. It's a good film.
It's my underrated. But okay.
All right, Rachel, go ahead.
Have we talked about Memento? Because Memento is actually my number 2. But where did that fall on Scott and Alicia's list?
We did. Number 3 on their list.
Okay, I must have.
Did we talk about that?
Yes,
we didn't talk
did.
about Memento.
I don't think we did talk about it.
I remember saying that I had it at number 4. It's all right.
Okay, well, we'll just move on. So, yeah, Memento's 2. So Dark Knight is actually number 3 for me. I recognize that it's the best of the Batman trilogy. It's the best. It's the most well-made, best well-acted. I think it's the movie that sort of changed the comic book genre. I mean, it's the darkest. It's literally based on the concept of chaos, and it pushes Batman to a place where no other, at least in any of the movies, comic book heroes had to go thus far, and it just sort of showed what kind of sacrifice you have to make in order to beat chaos, because it's practically unbeatable. And then to have Heath Ledger and the Joker literally embody chaos that well and that in such a mind-blowing way, that I think is what most people left the theater just awestruck about. So it's not my number 1 or 2 just because I think I enjoyed some of Nolan's other films better, but I completely recognize what it did for not just comic book movies, but movies in general.
Yeah, it used to be my number 1, and if I see it again, it might be my number 1 again. But yeah, I mean, I don't even consider this movie a comic book or superhero movie. It's a crime drama, and I put it up there with some of the classic crime movies like Goodfellas and Heat and all of those. It's one of the best movies in history. I think it's one of my all-time favorite movies, and there's no doubt it's the best comic book movie or superhero movie out there. No other movie really comes close to it. I mean, the complexity of it, there's just a moral complexity to it that no other superhero comic book movie has. The performances by Heath Ledger and Christian Bale. I mean, the entire cast, like Aaron Eckhart too. They're just so much better than any other superhero movie out there. And it's the Empire Strikes Back of the Dark Knight trilogy, I think. So that's, yeah, and it's my number 2.
Not to steer us off a topic too much, but let me ask you a question real quick, Dan. Who was your player?
The Joker.
The Joker, that's right. Never mind. Okay, yeah, the Dark Knight is my number 1, but I would like to talk about another one because everyone has made such valid points, and not to get redundant. The one that got left off, and if you watch the show, you know I wrote in to make sure they talked about it. It's The Prestige. The Prestige come out October 20th of 2006. So that's my Scott Mance there. But I touched on it a little bit on the Tesla. uh, and make it seem plausible. He has continued this theme with Inception and even Interstellar. To me, this movie kind of set his style more than any other film has. Even Memento might have set his tone, but I feel like this one set his style of playing with sci-fi and reality. I also went into how much I love Tesla, and even Rachel picked Anger. Gordon, all the characters in it are amazing, and I love all the undertones, the tones of obsession, how all of them are more obsessed with magic than they are their own wives. Granted, spoiler alert, Anger's died and kind of started this whole feud. And it was also came in between two of his most popular films, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. So all eyes were on Nolan for that film. And I just remember going into that and just being blown away.
All right, well, thank you for your thoughts on Prestige, Steve. I just want to ask everybody a question. Why so serious? Dark Knight is my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, and I picked the Joker earlier, and that's my favorite character. And I just think this movie is just when Scott and Alicia started, they talked about this and they said crime drama. That's what it is. It's basically a crime drama in the vein of Heat or something like that. And just the main characters are a psychopathic clown and a guy in a bat suit. But every other aspect of this movie is grounded in reality. I talked about Chicago and the streets and some of the scenes. I mean, if you didn't know this is a movie about a comic book character, it could easily be a movie about any two characters, you know? And that's what's so great about The Dark Knight. It is one of the most realistic portrayals of quote-unquote superhero characters. And going back to what I said before about the actors, I mean, Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Christian Bale, Heath Ledger, Aaron Eckhart gives one of his best performances of his career as Harvey Dent / Two-Face, and you know he's not in the movie that often, but when he gets on screen as Two-Face, you cannot take your eyes off him. He is mesmerizing as Two-Face in that role, and I really like the comparison of John F. Kennedy, the good boy. And I'm from Massachusetts, so I know all about John F. He's the squeaky clean. He's gonna clean up the city of Gotham. He's our hero. He's everybody's savior. And what happens? He turns into Two-Face, and he still flips that coin and makes his choices. But yeah, I mean, just everything from the ground up is amazing in this movie. Christopher Nolan hit it out of the park. How this movie did not get nominated for Best Picture, I have no idea. And I'm glad they changed the Best Picture rules to do 10 movies after this, because this movie got robbed. This should have gotten an Oscar nomination for Best Picture.
Do you think it was because of The Dark Knight getting snubbed the year before? That's my theory.
Oh, yes, it was. Absolutely. And I bet you Rachel could go on this, because she lives out in Hollywood. She probably knows a little bit about ins and outs of Hollywood more than I would. But yeah, that was the reason. Everybody thought The Dark Knight was a clear-cut Oscar nomination movie. In that year, I can't quote all the other movies that got nominated and The Dark Knight didn't, but I still say that was my favorite movie the entire year. Was 2008, I think. Yeah. And why that didn't guy, I can go on and on about this, me being upset about this. But Rachel, do you have any thoughts on that real quick on the Oscar race thing?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of setting them over the edge for that, because there was actually, for a while there, only small movies, like real prestige Oscar bait movies were getting the nominations, and that is sort of, they felt was just unfair, and they felt people were voting for those not necessarily because they were the better movies, but because they were the small prestige Oscar bait movies. So if you open up the field, you get sort of the next generation of Academy voters in there, and you just give everything more of a chance. I think it was sort of a way to sort of refresh the Academy Awards. It's not this, the stereotype of the old folks voting in their rooms without any real clear picture of what's going on in pop culture and how it's influencing movies and how art and pop culture can kind of come together. But I do think that the Batman or the Dark Knight not getting nominated that year was sort of like the final cry of like, we've got to change this.
And then Avatar gets nominated the very next year, which was a technical masterpiece, but the Dark Knight blew it away story-wise.
Oh yeah, hands down, hands down.
And if I'm not mistaken, sorry.
Go ahead, Ritika. What'd you say?
I was gonna say, if I'm not mistaken, it's the only superhero movie where the hero doesn't win, right?
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Thought about that.
Say that again, Justin. We didn't hear you.
I said that's a good point. I've never thought about that before.
All right, well, on that note, we're going to leave it up to everybody that has any trivia questions, any notes, any honorable mentions that they may have before the show is over. So going right down the line, Rachel, Rasika, and Steve.
The Prestige is actually number 5 on my list, but I think that Steve really said it all about that movie. But I do just want to hit on Memento a little bit because Nolan is a filmmaker who you can see the progression along his movies. The more people saw them and liked them, the more money and prestige he got, and he did bigger things, and he experimented, and I think that trajectory is great. But it really started with Memento because I honestly have no idea how he got the money to make this movie. Like, on paper, that script must have confused the hell out of most people. But he found a way to make it, and it's brilliant. I just remember being so blown away by it. And, the small technical things that he did with the black and white versus the color put you into a rhythm, and I think it's Guy Pearce's best role. Carrie Ann Moss, too. You think certain things at the beginning, you have perceptions and ideas about his character and her character, and you're sympathetic towards them, but then as the pieces start to fall together and you get immersed in this, you realize that the entire movie is about perception and self-perception and self-delusion, and it's just fascinating, both in the story and then the storytelling aspect of it. And I just think that it was the starting point for him to really just go to town and tell all these stories in these amazing ways, which he then did with the Batman movies and Inception and now Interstellar. So I hope more people get a chance to go back and see Memento, and I hope it's easier to find sometime soon because it really is a brilliant movie.
Yeah, it's out now, guys. They did a re-release of it this week. I guess they did it for Interstellar, so it was just bad timing on everybody trying to watch it. I feel your pain.
Yeah, Rachel, have you heard Finstock's theory of how Memento was made?
Oh, good Lord. Do I want to hear this theory?
Awesome. Can you tell it, Roz?
Basically, he said the editor they hired accidentally edited it backwards because he didn't know what he was doing. and they had to
and they got nominated for an Oscar for it because it was nominated for Best Editing that year. Rachel stole my answer. I was going to talk about Memento too. Oh,
sorry, we missed that, guys.
But another great movie I think gets overlooked is Following. Would you consider it a short film? It's like an hour and 10 minutes.
I would consider anything under an hour. Me personally, anything under 90 minutes, is a short film to me. That's the length of a TV show.
All right. Well, in that case, it's one of the best short films I've ever seen. I wasn't here for the Hitchcock Aftershow because I haven't seen too many Hitchcock movies. Sorry, but whenever I imagine what a Hitchcock movie might be like, I think of The Following. For some reason, I don't know. If you've seen The Following, I don't know if you guys can attest to that. If it's like a Hitchcock movie, I don't know. But I don't know. I love that movie. I love the characters in that movie, and what he's able to do in that short amount of time, and the non-linearity of it too, which we see more of in Memento and his future films. So, yeah.
I've already talked about all the films, but I do want to submit a trivia question, or not trivia question, more of a did you know from Guru, who goes by V Guru on Schmoville and Profiles. He's a very active profiler. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us tonight. A lot of people think they use shaky cam in Batman Begins, but did you know Nolan actually uses flash editing to show the extremely quick reflexes of Batman? And another one a guru gave me, 6 of Nolan's films have entered IMDb at the top 5, and that's excluding Interstellar, which is at number 11 right now, and could enter the top 5.
Wow. That is good. But once we already know, we've already heard the comparison, if we watched AMC Movie Talk, that the difference between IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. I think IMDb is more of a fan site, and Rotten Tomatoes is more of a critical site. But
yeah, it is. I agree, and not to go into a big conversation about this, because I have this all the time, a lot of people reference this, though. It's where a lot of people get their information and a lot of people get their news. So, I mean, it does count for something.
Yeah, you're right, Steve. Real quick, Rasika, on the following, they said that it cost $6,000 to make that movie.
Yeah.
And also on Christopher Nolan, all 8 of his movies grossed $3.5 billion. And Christopher Nolan was nominated for 3 Oscars, but never nominated for Best Director. Once for writing and twice for producing. That's a travesty, if you ask me. I mean, that is absolute travesty.
I hope he gets a nomination this time.
Oh, I think Interstellar is going to get a nomination, but we'll talk about that later. All right, with that in mind, that will do it for this week's Profiles After Show on Christopher Nolan. Everybody, Rachel, Rasika, and Justin, tell us where we can find you if we're looking to comment on something you're writing, or friend you, or see your nice little posts on your social media.
I'm Steve. Go ahead, Rachel. Go ahead.
Ladies first. Come on. What are you doing, Steve?
Let's just all say together. 1, 2, 3, go.
Yeah. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter at Rachel J. Cushing, J with a period, and I'm all over the Profiles page, so look me up there.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Rasika Wickramatne. If you're in Schmoville, just go to the admins. I'm right there. And on Twitter at The Lovely Possum.
You can find me at Steve Zissou. There's a few of them on Facebook, but I'm the one that's active in Schmoville and the one that's active on the Profiles page. Also would like to give a plug to the Profiles Facebook page for anybody that's big enough fan to actually be listening to this. If you're not participating, please go over there and participate. Scott and Alicia, they love it. Once a week, you will see a black and white picture that Scott will post, and he will ask you for your thoughts. Sometimes he will just say on any film, and sometimes he'll give specific films he wants thoughts on. That's where you guys and ladies need to go to put your comments in if you're interested in having them read on there.
And you can find me under my name, Dan Skip Allen, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I also am located on the Best Damn Movie Show page, where I do a show every week with my co-host, Vinny LaSpada, and my own website, From the Fourth Row, at WordPress.com. See you later, everybody.
Later, guys.
Why so serious?
Oh, right.